What is up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to a brand new video. So what I have for you guys today is basically a beginner's tutorial of Blender. I'm using Blender 2.9 Alpha. Yeah, you guys can follow along with 2.8, and yeah, so let's get on with this tutorial. So when you guys first open up Blender, you're going to see this come on here. So this little window here is basically called your splash screen, where you can see your recent project files that you've done. If you guys are opening Blender for the first time, you're probably not going to see any project files. So yeah, if you guys just want to go ahead and open one of them if you like, or if you guys want to start on a clean slate, just click general, and then when it opens, you're going to see your default screen. So basically your default screen is not going to be like this. You can customize your default layout, but the default layout comes basically with a cube. So it's basically something like this you guys are going to see. So yeah, don't be worried if you don't see this on my screen. So yeah, I'm just going to delete this cube, and yeah, that's what we're going to be doing for now. So we're going to go over the interface and a couple of windows and a couple of its features, and yeah. So basically this is your layout, which it says at the top here. At the top you can find your file, where you can open project and save your project and import 3D models. Like let's say you've downloaded a model from an online website, you guys can go to file, import, and you guys can import any 3D model, whatever format it is in. The edit is you guys can go and open up your preferences and change settings in Blender, and yeah. And render is when you're ready to render your image or animation. Go here, I actually have a video on how to render image and animation, and I have recommended render settings, so if you guys want to go check that out, I'll have a link in the description. And window is basically your different windows. So what they mean by window is, for example, we're in our layout window, and there are a couple other windows. There's modeling, sculpting, UV editing, shading, and all that good stuff. So we're just going to go back to layout, and yeah, then there's help, for where you can go to the manual, tutorials. The tutorials are online, so it's going to take you to your browser, and yeah. At the top here we have our windows, but we're going to come to that in a few. So here we have our select box, which is basically, if you hold down using left click, you guys can use this to select multiple objects. So then we have our cursor, which is basically where your object is going to spawn. So if you guys put the cursor somewhere else, when you hit Shift A to add an object, it is going to spawn it somewhere else. So I'm just going to center it by holding down Shift and hitting S and putting cursor to world origin, and it snaps back to where it was. Then there's the move tool, which I'm going to have to bring in a object for us. So I'm going to bring in this monkey here. And when you click on your move tool, you're going to basically see these arrows comes on. We have our x-axis, our y-axis, and our z-axis. Moving them along, selecting one of the axis moves it along that specific axis, and if you guys want to move it freely, just hit G on your keyboard and it's going to move it to wherever you want, but I'm just going to snap it back. And then there's the rotate, which again you guys can rotate it on every single axis. If you guys want a more in-depth tutorial on these tools, I also have a video on that, so we're not gonna go through that as yet. Then there's the scale. So what I personally do is just click on the move tool, and I don't really use scale or transform. I would just use keyboard shortcuts. So the shortcut for scale is S. You guys can just scale it, and if you guys want to scale it on a particular axis, you guys can just hit SX to scale it on the S axis, Z to scale it on the Z axis, and stuff like that. And then there's the transform object, which basically is a combination of every single one of our tools. You have the move tool here, you have the scale tool, you have the rotation, and good stuff like that. So yeah. Then we have our animate tool, which I don't know, I haven't looked at this in depth because I've never really used it in my workflow, but I think it allows you to draw in 3D. Let me guys know what you think in the comments below. So yeah, that's basically what the animate tool is for. And the measure tool is another important tool. If you guys want to make objects that correspond to real life measurements, then you guys can use the measure tool to measure it, and it tells you your measurement in meters. You guys can obviously change that to whatever you want. And yeah, then there's the add cube, which is a new feature in Blender 2.9. If you guys have Blender 2.8, you're not going to have this feature. So yeah, which how you use this add cube is you just draw a base square that's going to be the size of your cube space, and you're going to just bring it up to about wherever you want it and click, and a cube is going to appear right there, just like that. And yeah, you guys can obviously add more cubes just by doing this. You guys can add any size or any shapes that you please. Yeah, just a really cool feature that I thought I'd share with you guys in Blender. So yeah, you guys can add all sorts of cubes. Then you can go to the select box and you can select all of them and just delete them. Delete all the objects. I'm just gonna add back my monkey. And yeah. So at the bottom we have our timeline, which basically shows all of our keyframes. Now keep in mind, if you guys want to change the timeline to something else like graph editor, you're gonna have to click on this icon, then everything comes up. You have your shader editor, which is a node based workflow. And yeah, I'm just gonna change it back to timeline. And this is your default layout. We're gonna come to the side in a few. At the top we have your axis orientation tool, which shows you your direction where you pointed at, and we have the zoom tool for if you guys don't know the shortcuts, and we have the pan tool to move around, and we have the camera tool to navigate in and out of your camera. Now they're all keyboard shortcuts for this. And yeah, so basically the shortcuts, the basic shortcuts for Blender is left click to select and click away to deselect. Right click comes up with the object context menu as it says at the top here. Middle mouse, you press middle mouse to pan around like this, and you hold shift and middle mouse to move around like this. And if you guys don't have scroll wheel, hold on control and middle mouse to zoom in and out. And that is the basic controls of Blender. So yeah, we're gonna move on to the next window, which is the modeling window, which basically carries whatever object you have into edit mode, and you guys can obviously edit the object. You guys can extrude the faces, move them around and stuff like that, but I'm not gonna do that. So yeah, edit mode you can use for a lot of cool stuff. And yeah, that's basically what you use edit mode for. You guys can change up this monkey. You guys can go to wireframe. Also Z, when you hit Z, you can go into solid view, which you're in. You can go into wireframe view, which shows the basic mesh. You can go into your material preview and your rendered view. So I'm currently in Eevee just for this tutorial. And yeah, I'm just gonna go to wireframe, and I'm gonna use my box tool just to select like somewhere between half of the object. Then I'm just gonna go to solid, and I'm gonna press delete and select faces, and it cuts our object in half. But I'm just gonna undo that. So yeah, really cool features of edit mode. So the next tab is your sculpting tab, where you basically can sculpt an object. So for say I have this monkey and I have this brush here, so it's called the sculpt draw, I believe. So I'm just gonna be using it, and using left click you guys can draw and stuff like that. So if you guys want to sculpt properly, you need a more smoother object. So I'm going to go back to modeling, and I'm going to hit A to select everything, all the faces. Right click, subdivide. I'm going to click this arrow, and I'm going to bring the number of cuts to 10 until it has a lot of cuts. And I'm going to bring up the smoothness about 2 times or so. So yeah, then I'm going to go over to sculpting, and then I'm going to use this brush, and it gives us a more vivid sculpt because it has more faces. So yeah, I'm just gonna do that. And yeah, that's what you use sculpting for. There are tons and tons and tons of brushes. You guys can select your brushes here. You guys can search for them. So the UV editing is basically for texture mapping and image texturing and stuff like that. We're not gonna go in depth to that. If you guys already know what is texture mapping, then I will not be explaining it. If you guys don't know, there's tons of videos on YouTube about this. You guys can go check out one. So yeah, then there's texture paint, where you guys can basically paint different colors on your object based on the texture. I don't really use this a lot personally. I would use shading. So yeah, you guys can also go ahead and look up a in-depth tutorial on this. So yeah, we're going to be moving on to shading, which is what I use a lot. It's probably one of my favorite windows. So you guys can go to material preview, which it comes in by default, and you guys can hit the DEL key on your number pad just to bring in a nice close view of this object. And yeah, you guys can hit new to create a new material. And if you guys have any experience with nodes, I guess you guys probably already know what this is, but if you guys have no experience with nodes, then I recommend looking at a video. I'll link one in the description. Nodes in your material basically allows you to change the color of your object. You can go to base color and change it with this color wheel, and just like that. Really simple. So yeah, we're gonna go over to the animation. So at the bottom we have the dope sheet. We have our object mode here with these two things turned off. You guys can basically animate the object over here, and you guys can basically see how it plays here. I'm going to show you a basic animation. So you guys put on automatic keyframing, and then you're going to hit this arrow, and then just hit G and move it around a bunch, and just left click and hit the pause button. If you guys bring your marker over here and you guys hit the space bar to play, you're going to see it replays that animation over and over again. And yeah, there are more in-depth tutorials on keyframing and animation, but this is just really basic. So I'm just gonna hit delete and delete all of my keyframes, so we have more movie data. So then there's rendering. So when you guys hit F12 or Control F12 for your render, it's basically gonna appear over here, but Blender 2.9 opens up a new window for that now. So yeah, that's a new feature that 2.7 didn't have. Then there's compositing. For after your final render, you guys can put some small tweaks that you can't do without rendering your object. So yeah, you guys can put in some noising and stuff like that. And then there's your scripting, which opens up your Python console, or if you just want to script something out, anything, a video, a commercial. So yeah, and then there's this modeling tab. So we're just going to go back to layout, and we're going to look at this side panel. So at the top we have basic stuff. I don't really use this. No one use this. So yeah, then over here we have our render engine. You guys can change it to Eevee or Cycles. Mine is at Eevee, and this is how it looks in the rendered. And you guys can change it to Cycles, and Cycles is a way better render engine, but it's a whole lot noisier depending on the power of your computer. So as you guys can see, mine the noise is pretty fast. Some of you guys are going to take a good time to the noise. So I'm going to go back to Solid, and I'm going to change it back to Eevee. Now there's Workbench, but that doesn't really offer so much of a render view. So yeah, then you can change how much samples you have in your render and your viewport, which doesn't really matter for Eevee. And you guys can turn off and on viewport denoising. Then you guys can turn on ambient occlusion, blue, motion blur, screen space reflection, stuff like that. But basically my default settings. So over here I will turn on ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections. I never use motion blur. And if you guys want to make your background transparent, then you guys can go to film and just check transparent, and it makes your background transparent for your render. And yeah, that's basically all the stuff that I use. You guys can obviously check whatever you want, motion blur, stuff like that. But we're gonna go over here. You guys can change the dimensions of your render and stuff like that. Mine is at 1920 by 1080. You guys can change it to 4K, 720, anything you like. Then there's your frame rate for your animation. Then there's your output folder for your photo and animation. And then there's your format that has AVI JPEG, AVI RAW, and FFmpeg video for video formats. And then there's a bunch of photo formats and stuff like that. And the next tab is basically your render layers and stuff like that, which I don't really use. I don't use this either. So then there's your world settings. So you guys can basically change the color of your world for your rendered view, but I have mine transparent, so I'm just going to go ahead and change that really quick. Uncheck transparency, and then I'm going to go to world settings, and you guys can obviously change the color of your world to whatever you want. You guys can change it to pitch black or just a shocking color, whatever you guys feel like. So yeah, that's basically what it is for world. So yeah, I'm gonna jump in solid mode, and yeah, you guys can also bring in HDRIs, which I'll be doing a tutorial in a couple of weeks on HDRIs and how to use them and what are they used for. So be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for when that video comes out. So yeah, then there's the volume and some other simple stuff. So yeah, and you guys may probably see Lily Surface Scraper, which doesn't show up on your guys' screen. It's basically an add-on. I'm going to be doing a tutorial in a couple weeks about that also. So yeah, don't worry if you don't really see this. You're also going to see this in the material texture. So yeah, it's right here, Lily Surface Scraper and stuff like that. So yeah, then this is basically your object edit mode. So if you guys don't really like to click the arrows and move it around, you guys want like precise uh, placements, you guys can use this also to move your objects around. You guys use it to scale your objects. Also, you guys use it to rotate your objects and stuff like that. So yeah, then there's relations, collections, and stuff like that. But we're not gonna go through that. As I said, this is the beginner's tutorial. So down here we have our modifiers tab. Really important tab. You guys are gonna use this a lot, especially for modeling and animation. So yeah, you can add basic modifiers like an array, which basically duplicates your objects. You guys can choose how much, and you guys can change your offset, stuff like that. But this is not a object modifiers tutorial, so yeah, I'm just going to show you guys one more modifier. It's called the subdivision surface. We call it subsurf modifier for us 3D modelers. Yeah, this is what basically does. It makes your objects a whole lot smoother. You guys can turn this up to make your object smoother, and you guys can change how it looks in the viewport and in the render. I usually keep it one stage higher in my render than in my viewport. And yeah, this basically duplicates your faces until your object is really smooth. The more higher you go, the more faces and the more laggy your viewport performance will, or Blender will just crash. So yeah, that's basically it for the modifiers tab. So down here we have our particles tab, and down here we have the physics tab, where you guys can put a physics simulation, soft body, there's fluid, rigid body, collision, all that good stuff. And then down here we have your constraints. So there's a lot of constraints which are very useful. For example, you guys can hit Shift A and add in a curve, and you guys can customize that curve and just let your camera follow it. You're going to be using object constraints for that. Then there's your vertex group, shape keys, UV maps, and stuff like that. If you guys have a modifier that needs vertex groups to navigate what it modifies, you guys are going to have to hit the plus and make some vertex group. By double clicking, you guys can rename it, and by hitting this minus sign, you guys can delete it. So over here we have our materials tab, which doesn't have anything because you have to hit new. Then it brings up your principled shader here, and yeah, as I said again, you guys can obviously change the color of your object. I'm gonna go to material preview for that. And yeah, by hitting base color, you guys can just change the color of your object, just like that. So I'm just gonna go back to solid. And the last tab is basically for texture paint. You guys can add whichever brush you want, and you guys can just, as I said, paste on the edges and vertices on your object. So yeah, I'm not going to use this. I'm just going to hit X to delete this brush. And yeah, that's basically all for the side panel. So up here we have the name of your object. If you guys hit Shift A and bring in, let's say, a circle, you're going to see circle comes up here. And if you guys don't want to like do this to select an object, you guys can select it by the name. Double click on the name to rename it. I'm going to call this one GGG, some just random stuff like that. And to delete objects, just select them, and to delete multiple objects, use box select or hit B for more accurate selections. And yeah, that's how you select multiple objects or multiple faces and vertices. So yeah, let me teach you guys some of the basic shortcuts that you guys have to know. So the first thing, we have object mode up here, and once you select an object, it's going to be in object mode. So we can basically hit G and move around the object basically wherever we want and do whatever we want with it, scale it up and stuff like that. But now it's edit mode, where you can edit your object further. You guys can hit 1 for vertices select, where you can basically select vertices and edit them, or you guys can hit 2 for edge select, where you guys can basically edit edges and stuff like that, and 3 for face select, just to hit faces and stuff like that. So some of the most popular shortcuts that you guys are going to use and see a lot are extrude. So it's E for extrude, and it just extrudes out the face, and scale. You guys are going to see people using that a lot for objects. And then inset, so I for inset, and it just insets the face, and you guys can easily extrude it, stuff like that, and rotate it by hitting R. S to scale, G to move, R to rotate, and stuff like that. And then you guys are going to see another thing with loop cuts. So the shortcut for loop cuts is Control R, and then you guys can add loop cuts. Using scroll wheel, you can change how much loop cuts there are. So yeah, by pushing forward on the scroll wheel, you guys can add more loop cuts, and by rolling back, you can add less. So you can obviously add a loop cut somewhere here and move it around. And yeah, that's basically what loop cuts are used for. And yeah, that's basically all of the more popular modifiers that you guys are gonna hear about. You guys are not gonna hear about anything else. So if you guys want to change how you see your object, you guys can hit your tilde key. The tilde key is basically the key above tab, the tab key. So just hit it and you could see your object from the top. Hit it again, you can see it from the right, and stuff like that. Or you guys can click on these letters here, which is your axis. Or for shortcuts, you guys can hit 1, Control 1, tree, and Control tree, and 7 for top, and Control 7 for bottom. Just like that, all good stuff. And yeah, if you guys want to shade object smooth, you guys are gonna left click, shade smooth, and it's gonna look kind of weird. So just go to vertex, groups, and go to normals, and just check auto smooth, and it's gonna look not all that smooth, but it's gonna look a little bit better than what we had before. So yeah, that's basically the explanation of this layout. Now, another way you guys can navigate between your rendered views, instead of pressing Z, you guys can go over here, which this is the icon for a wireframe, this is for solid, this is for material preview, and this is obviously for our rendered view. And yeah, that is basically a really quick and simple beginner's course of Blender. I'm just going to teach you guys how to model something really quickly. I don't even know what I'm going to model. Let's see, what can I model? Probably Steve from Minecraft. So I'm just gonna hit A to select everything. 1 for the front view. Bring it up some more by hitting GX, and then click this face. Inside it just a little bit, and I can scale it on the Y-axis by hitting SY and scale it. Then I'm gonna hit EZ to extrude on the Z-axis, and I'm gonna extrude it down just a bit. So now I'm going to hit Control R and add a loop cut. So I'm going to push my scroll wheel up once to add 2 loop cuts, and I'm going to click twice to confirm the cuts. Then I'm going to hit 3, and I'm going to select this face, hold down Shift and select this face, and I'm going to hit EZ to extrude on the Z axis. And now we have sort of like a feet. So now you guys can also hit Control R again and make a loop cut, click once and slide it up to about here, and hit 3 to go back into face mode. Now you guys can change this is vertex mode, this is edge select, and this is face mode. You guys can easily navigate through them by hitting 1, 2, 3. So I'm just gonna hit 3 face mode. So I'm going to hit Shift, going to the front view. I'm gonna hit E to extrude it out, and it extrudes out. You guys can come over here and do the same thing. Now you guys could have used a mirror modifier. What a mirror modifier is going to do is basically lock off half of the object, and it only allows you to edit one half. But when you edit one half, whatever you do on this one half, it is going to appear on that other half. So I'm going to shift select that side of the arm, shift select the other side. I'm just going to bring it down, just give it a more humanly look. I'm going to tab to get out of edit mode. And yeah, now I'm just gonna give you guys a quick run through of the shading tab. So over at shading, you guys can hit the DL key to come up close to your object, hit new, and then it brings up our principal shader. So I'm gonna hit Shift A to add anything, by the way. Even if you're doing video editing in Blender, it's always Shift A. I'm gonna hit search and type in color ramp, and I'm gonna bring in a color ramp, then hit Shift A again. I'm gonna grab a Voronoi texture, so type in VORO, and it brings up Voronoi. Bring it in, put it right there. Then I'm gonna hit Shift A one last time, and I'm gonna click bump. Sorry guys. Then I'm gonna click bump. I'm just gonna bring in a bump texture, and I'm gonna plug the color into the height of the bump, the distance into the factor of the color ramp. Then I'm gonna plug the color ramp's color output into the base colors input. Then I'm going to plug the normal from the bump shader from the bump node into the normal input for our principal shader. And as you guys can see, we have this sort of self-fracture look, if you guys know what is that. And you guys can go to your scale for your Voronoi texture, and you guys can change how it looks. Obviously you guys can change, I'm gonna just leave it somewhere like this, and you guys can change the randomness and just make it like that. but I'm gonna put it somewhere here so it kind of looks like bricks. And then you guys can also change the distance and stuff like that on your bump node, just to give it a little more surreal look, and the strength of your bump and stuff like that. And the color ramp is where you go to edit the colors. So I don't know if you guys see the black circles, but yeah, you guys are gonna click on this black marker here, and you guys are gonna click here, and you're gonna just bring it up, and you guys can change the color to whatever you want, and it changes the black part there. So I'm gonna leave this over here, and I'm gonna click on the white. I'm gonna change it to a nice light blue color, and yeah, it looks kind of weird, but yeah, it looks weird and cool at the same time. So another thing is you guys can go to edit and click preferences, go to add-ons and type in Node Wrangler. I already have it enabled, but just make sure you have this thing checked. Go to here, click save preferences and exit, and click on your Fahrenheit texture and hit Control T, and it brings up your Node Wrangler add-on, which maps your texture, which now you guys can edit it. So I'm just gonna bring the object into the vector, and it kind of changes it up a little bit, but not all that. So you guys can obviously go back to here, and you guys can change the scale and obviously make it bigger. And over here now you guys can change the location of your texture. You guys can change the rotation, how it's rotated, and you guys can obviously animate it. So yeah, that's the power of texture mapping. So yeah, that's basically a quick rundown of the shader the shading tab for Blender, which is if you guys are doing 3D modeling, which is what you're going to use the most. And yeah, this was a really quick and simple beginner's tutorial of Blender, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Also guys, services on Fiverr. I'm editing videos, making custom intros, making custom logos, recommending PC parts. I'm recommending laptops, phones, drones, all that good stuff. I'll have the link for it in the description. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Syndrome Tech YouTube, and all my other social media will be linked down below. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, have a good one.
Alright guys, so quick announcement, if you guys want to learn how to make really quick and easy simple audio visualizers for Blender, please go check out HV Plus's channel. He's a YouTuber and his channel is called HV Plus. I'll have a link in the description. Super cool guy. I really recommend you guys to go check him out, and yeah,